No bills have been introduced. The House comes to questions for oral answer. Question number 1 in the name of David Bennett.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Finance. How is the government's economic program helping to keep interest rates lower during this economic cycle compared to the previous economic cycle in the mid-2000s?
Order. Honourable Bill English.
While some increase in interest rates is inevitable in a growing economy, and the government will do what it can to ensure that it does not put pressure on rising interest rates. In particular, we need to avoid the mistakes of the previous economic cycle under the previous government, where government spending picked up rapidly, house prices soared, household debt increased sharply. This left households facing floating mortgage rates of almost 11% by 2008, and business interest rates exceeded 9%. Of course, these high interest rates dampened business and investment growth and sent the export sector into recession. Floating mortgage rates have fallen to below 6% for a family with a $200,000 mortgage. That has been a saving of around $200 a week compared to what they were paying in 2008, and you can be sure that they will not want to go back to 11% interest rates under a Labor government.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, David Bennett.
What steps is the government taking to keep government spending under control, and how will this help take pressure off interest rates?
Honourable Bill English.
Two areas where the government can work to avoid putting pressure on rising interest rates through the housing market regulation and government spending control. As the Reserve Bank regularly points out, careful government spending will help to keep interest rates lower for longer. If government makes large cash injections into the economy when it is growing significantly and house prices are already high, then interest rates will be pushed up further, bearing in mind that New Zealand households still have quite high levels of debt. So the government has set a target of returning to surplus next year by understanding the cost drivers that lie behind government spending and getting control of those.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, David Bennett.
What approach is the government taking to improving housing market regulation, and how will this contribute to preventing a damaging spike in interest rates?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, rapid increases in house prices are damaging for the economy because it puts pressure through a high exchange rate on our export sector. They're a challenge for government because it puts pressure on government to fund the affordability gap for households who can't afford rising mortgages, and it's unfair on individuals who are trying to enter the housing market. Demand for housing is rising, and a turnaround in migration flows is likely to push demand even higher. Unfortunately, our planning rules and attitudes within our councils and to some extent government have restricted the supply of new houses that can be built in response to this demand. This is why the government has passed legislation in this House, opposed by Labor, to streamline planning rules, and is working with the Auckland and Christchurch councils to significantly increase the supply of housing over the next 2 or 3 years so that low and middle income families can benefit from home ownership, so we can avoid high interest rates and have a healthy export sector.
Point of order.
Sorry, Mr Speaker, it was such a long answer, I wondered if perhaps you had nodded off in the middle of it, because it just seemed to go on and on.
That is a point of... Well, it's not a point of order, and it will in itself lead to disorder. Supplementary question, David Bennett.
Supplementary question.
Order.
What progress is being...
Order. Can I just ask the member to please cease that loud barracking while I'm calling for a supplementary question? Supplementary question, David Bennett.
Supplementary question. What progress is being made in increasing the supply of new housing as part of the government's wider program to address issues around housing affordability?
Honourable
Mr. Speaker,
Bill English.
the decisions on the supply of housing rest with councils, but government can make it easier for them to make decisions to improve the supply of housing. Statistics New Zealand last week reported the trend for new dwelling consents is at its highest level since September 2007 and double the level of March 2011. So there are some signs that the supply of housing is increasing, but if we're going to avoid significant ongoing increases in house prices and therefore even higher interest rates, we need councils to make more positive decisions for more housing supply.
Supplementary question, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does the Minister accept that the 20% increase in electricity prices over the last 5 years, in addition to the 20% rise in house prices, particularly in Auckland, is putting pressure on the Reserve Bank Governor to increase interest rates, and that his government's failure to control inflation coming out of those two sectors is part of the problem for why families are going to face higher interest rates?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, no, I don't accept that, and for one simple reason. The rules around housing have been made by councils, and it's important that we work with councils so they understand that when they're making rules about a denser city or a more livable city or anti-urban sprawl, those decisions impact the whole economy, and particularly they can have a damaging impact on our export sector, who council planners don't historically think about very much. So we all have a job to control government spending, to make our electricity market more competitive, to work with councils for more housing supply, and if we do our job, New Zealanders will enjoy lower interest rates than they otherwise would.
Supplementary question, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does the Minister believe that the 20% increase in electricity prices over 5 years, more than twice the rate of inflation across the rest of the economy, is a sign of a competitive market in the electricity sector, or is it a sign of a failure of the competition in the electricity sector?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the rate of increase in electricity prices is half what it was when that member was in government. Well, it was 8% per year, I think, for 9 years. So this government has taken the step of making the market more competitive. That is proving now to slow the rate of increase. Part of the increase of electricity prices is an investment program begun by the previous government that was necessary to spend billions on upgrading the strength of our electricity grid to ensure security of supply. And now the effect of that investment is flowing through into prices. But the market is more competitive. The last thing New Zealand needs is someone coming in, destroying the competitive market, putting us back 20 years to where I think Brazil is, and us having to go and learn all the lessons again.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With regard to the electricity market, does he believe it is a sign of a competitive market when demand falls and prices rise?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, of course in the long run, if demand keeps falling, prices will eventually come in line with that. But I can tell you the market is much better at sorting that out than that member ever would be if he became the Minister of Energy, because his policy is all about Russell Norman setting prices. In fact, a better way to do it is people knocking on doors, electricity companies knocking on doors as they are now all over New Zealand, offering big discounts.
Question number 2, Dr Russell Norman.